But I wish you really well with your group. It sounds terrific. I'm such in favor of the LGBT community and women in film.
Thank
I
you.
just think those organizations are terrific. We really need women directors and more creative, not just script supervisors and makeup artists, but in more in the director producer realm. And of course, some of the best directors in the country and the best producers, are women of major films, and I'd like to see more of that.
Yes, we're here today with Mr. Bill Milling. I have to say, I know him personally, and I see you as a refuge for filmmakers in New York City. So I just want to say thank you for being here. How are you today?
Fine, excellent. Looking forward to hearing also more about your organization. It sounds exciting and innovative and very much needed.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, we stand for equality in filmmaking with integrity and collaborations. And I just think from what I know of you, you've stood for that for a very long time. Um,
Well,
um,
thanks.
yes, no, thank you for being you. I'm sure people know you already, but just for people who might not, maybe let's begin with you own several studios, the American Movie Company. When did you open that up to the public? How did the idea start? Just give us some background, please.
Okay, well, let me just say I no longer own several studios.
Oh,
Just as kind of a way background, I started as a film director, as a feature film director after film school. And myself and my friends did a dozen, 2 dozen low budget feature films, gradually increasing the budgets from a couple of 100,000 to 500 to 750 to a couple of million, etc. During the time when movie theaters were showing double features, and what you could do was to do a movie that was kind of the second half of the feature at a lower budget. So I would be approached by, let's say, a theater chain that just had that had a horror film they're about to release. And they would say, okay, Bill, we want a film like this, or a motorcycle movie, or a science fiction movie, or a beach movie. So would be approached by, hey, Bill, we would like a movie that's science fiction, lots of ships, lots of stuff. Here's our budget. Give us a treatment, give us a script, and then gradually, if they liked it, they would fund it, and we would make the movie. Then we moved into just by accident working with the studios in LA that were doing sitcoms, but were set in New York. So we did Mad About You, Friends, Will and Grace, How I Met Your Mother, as well as almost every other sitcom pieces and bits of. But those we did almost
wow.
exclusively for New York. So I would have the wardrobe and look-alike actors in New York for all those actors. And then when Helen and Paul exited their building on 55th Avenue, that would be my duplicate actors getting into a cab, doing this, doing that, or going around the city. And that was kind of fun for a number of years, not as creative as doing our own films. And then gradually, I had a studio that I did own, and at the beginning of the green screen was blue screen at that idea. I was very interested in special effects, having been a special effects director. So what I did was I put up a blue screen and lights, and found virtually immediately studio shooting companies around town wanted to use it. The issue was it was hot because lights at that point were very hot. It was noisy. I was right on the corner of Houston and Broadway, so I had to block the windows. That made it even hotter. And so I moved to a different space down at 50 Broadway, collaborating with some other filmmakers. We took a whole floor down there, and we were there for a couple of years when all of a sudden they doubled our rent down there, and it just
Wow.
became possible. The gap between coming in money and going out money was just not going to be there. So we left, and it occurred to me that because our presence on the web and because our reputation in the business was so strong, that I would be better bringing clients who trusted me to other people's studios and collaborating with that studio on bringing in a crew, camera equipment, grip and lighting. And now we're morphing into other more interesting things like LED walls, XR video production, doing really expensive high-tech kind of things. So, and as well as teleprompters. We are the largest teleprompter company on the planet.
Wow.
So, and that just kind of happened by accident as well. So we're now a sort of a different company in that what I want to do is own less and less, but find really good, talented, collaborating people, bring our resources to them, those resources to the benefit of both, market it, because I'm finding more and more interest in international marketing, building really innovative websites with a back office that's really powerful, so that when we are collaborating, as I am with the manufacturer of video walls and these advanced studios, we can bring the right kind of client to that studio, and we can produce a product that's really exceptional. For instance, last year we had Universal Pictures come to us from Los Angeles to do a critical piece of their Jason Bourne exhibit down in Florida in our studio, when there's all these high-tech studios in LA, that they came to New York to us to do it. And they felt they got a better job. And it wasn't less expensive. It was probably more by the time they had to come here to do it. But they felt that the job was what they wanted. And that's where we want to be. Don't want to be the cheapest people in town, but we do want to be the best. We do want to give really good bang for the buck, really honest day's work, and the absolute cutting edge in terms of technology. So that's kind of where the company is moving right now, very, very vigorously. We're testing the waters on almost every new movie technology that comes along. We're at least flirting with, if not diving into the pool with already. So that's kind of fun. My collaborators really like it. We have a strong sense of family here in New York, that we're fighting the really interesting fight. I think we are the way movies are going to be made in this next generation. And that's what's exciting to me. So there you go. That's more than an elevator. It's probably more than you wanted, but
no. Okay. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I wanted to touch. I saw that you are doing the LED screens. I think that is so innovative. And the mind just like reels like, wow, it seems like, green screen is gone already, and that's going to be, the latest.
Let me just jump in on that, because
Sure, please.
there is that kind of widespread impression. But green has its advantages and LED has its advantages. The technology that is underneath both, which is the combination of a 3D virtual photoreal set being composited in real time with actors, is the same for both. So you say to yourself, well, do I need an LED wall or do I need a green screen? Well, in the green screen technology, one, it's at this particular point right now, it's less expensive because it's easier to put a lot of green on a stage than it is to put a lot of video wall. A lot cheaper. Also, the ability to put an LED floor in your studio is quite expensive, etc., like this right now. So the LED wall studios are pretty generally the walls, and the floor then is kind of the studio floor, or you're bringing in something. You're bringing in a ton of sand to do a Star Wars movie, or you're bringing in rocks and trees, or you're bringing in all of this stuff. which not only escalates the cost, but means you can't turn around on a dime and say, now I want to shoot a different scene because you got this whole floor to deal with.
Right.
So um, the the um, the utility green is right now, I think, very, very viable. Now, I can see a future where they do in what they call the volume with Disney in LA that's doing the Star Wars movies, when you can have a complete dome of LED, and then you can have an LED floor, or they can combine green screen with LED, which we're constantly
Wow.
trying to push, which would really be where your floor can be involved in the process. That's the holy grail, I think, of the future. The advantages then back to your LED wall are the light from the wall illuminates the person or the people, just like it does in the real world. If you have an outdoor scene and the sun is up in the right hand corner, well, it's going to shine down on the left shoulder of the person facing you. And it's really cool. And when that person walks behind something, that sunlight is inhibited a little bit. And when you think of what you have to do to get that effect on a real stage, it's constantly changing lights and moving lights and doing all that kind of stuff, which now you no longer have to do. So downstream, yes, green will probably go away to LED once that technology takes a couple of giant steps forward in terms of availability and price. And you can get LED floors, or as I said, combining a green screen floor with with an LED back. At any rate,
Yeah.
technology changes so much; it's hard to know what the future is going to be. But I want to be there. It happens. That's the
Y-
idea. Our company wants to be there. We want to be in touch with everybody who's doing the same thing, and kind of get together and fight the fight for moving, just like we moved out of those strips of plastic with the holes in it, that we used to have into digital, and move forward, into a future where cinema is really interesting. Uh, Unreal Engine is now moving into what they call meta-humans right now, which is the idea of doing photorealistic human beings moving like human beings, etc.
Oh, wow.
That is interesting. Disney now has a process of aging an actor. They take an actor on screen, shot in the traditional way, and say, what would he look like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? And the computers make that change on the face, um, figuring what his physiology would morph into given 5 years, 10 years. And by the same token, taking that away so they can physically move actors back and forth without hours and hours of prosthetics, sitting in a chair, putting makeup and putting things into your face and whatnot else. So it's a changing world and an exciting world and a world I very much want to be a part of.
Well, congratulations. I mean, yeah, no, that's so innovative. Yeah, remember they did some of that on The Irishman, right? With Martin Scorsese with the de-aging.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
just mind-blowing what could be done now. And yeah, yeah, and I love what you were saying about the Holy Grail, about mixing the green screen with the LED, how enriching and enthralling, and the level of control you could have in the studio like that is just amazing. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say I remember being at a Christmas party of yours, and just everybody was speaking so highly of you, and it goes to show, like, what you were saying about starting out as a filmmaker to yourself. I remember one of the people at the party was telling me that you were just so generous in allowing them time to edit their project as much as they could. So I was just wondering if you could relate a story from when you were filmmaking of something that just really moved you about one of your projects that will always stay with you, kind of, we've talked so much about, the tech side. Maybe let's talk more about that human side with just any experiences you had that really moved you as a filmmaker.
Let's see, there were so many. Um, One of the things that I had so much fun with, in the idea of being outside the box and yet bonding with a group was, I got approached by two different distributors. One wanted a sort of a romantic comedy, and the other wanted Indiana Jones had just come out. They wanted an Indiana Jones type movie, and the budgets for both were like practically nothing. At that point, there was a piece of technology they used on 2001: A Space Odyssey called front screen projection, and that was a very interesting thing where the screen was a special screen made by 3M, the people that make the Scotch tape, and it bounced the light back exactly into the light source. It wasn't spread all over; it came back exactly. So you rounded the camera, the lens, with a ring of lights onto the screen, so that the image came directly back into the camera. So you had what was sort of like a teleprompter with a mirror in the front and a projector underneath an image, let's say a photograph, and that photograph, the camera lens saw sharply on the screen behind the person, but if you stood even 1 foot to the left or right, it was just a blank screen. So it was kind of a weird technology called front screen projection. They used it in 2001. I found a guy who was selling one, a photographer, bought it for my old studio. And then what we decided to do for this movie was, instead of doing it here in New York, we decided to do it in Egypt and in Europe. And the costs sound incredible. How do you take a cast all over Europe and do something when you're going to do 12 or 15 cities in Europe? How do you go up the Nile in Egypt on this tiny little budget? Well, my director, my production manager, Bob, just explored it all and figured out that this was possible. It was possible if the actors wanted to do it. So I got together actors that I work with and said this: look, here's the deal. We're going to go away for a month and a half to Africa and to Europe. And guess what? I'm going to pay you anything. And they went, what? When you come back, we're going to spend another 6 weeks in the studio with sets in New York, and I'm going to pay you full rate. While you're away in Europe, I will pay for all of your expenses. I'll give you a per diem every day, plus room, meals, everything else. Half of you are going to be the stars of movie number one, and the other half, the second bananas. It flips once we get to Europe. You guys are going to be the stars of the movie, and the other group of you are going to be the supporting actors. I expected to have a hard time. Nobody said no. I mean, unbelievable. Nobody said no. So we went to Egypt. It was a great experience. The Egyptians we met were just so lovely. Everybody was excited, trying to help us. So we shot at the pyramids. My leading lady drove an Arabian stallion across the desert in front of the Sphinx and pulled up in front of the pyramids. We went up the Nile to Luxor. We shot in the Temple of Karnak. We shot in King Tut's tomb. I mean, it was in the real King Tut's tomb. I mean, it was so unbelievable that when you got there, that people were just so cool to be in a movie and so helpful. And I mean, we paid them, but nowhere near what you would be asked to pay in New York. Like, our driver was $25 a day with his Mercedes and gas driving around Cairo.
Wow.
As a translator as well. So we actually came out of shooting in Egypt cheaper than if I were to shoot in New York. Now, what meant was I had to be the cameraman, the AC, and the gaffer. and my production manager had to be the sound man and the production manager and also help with lights. And the whole cast helped with everything. Now, for instance, when we got to Europe, we went from Rome to, let's see, Rome, we did Venice, we did, Rome, we did Venice, we did, we did about 5 cities in Italy. Then we took we were on a Eurail pass. We went around the Alps to Vienna. So we spent some time in Vienna, then Salzburg, then Munich. Then we went on to Paris, where I shot in Versailles. We shot in the Louvre. We shot all over Paris. We shot in the south then we went to England. We shot in London. We went down to a castle, a tournament in the south, and shot Knights in Armor, and then on to Ireland before we went home. And the concept was this: we rode in. Everybody had a Eurail pass, first class. So we pulled into a train station. The female members of the group would shove the luggage out the window. The guys would run outside and catch it. There'd be a huge pile of all of our luggage. None of them had ever been to Europe before. So I would run and get us 2 or 3 taxis and a porter, and then all the luggage would come out, would go to a pension, which was probably a 4-story walk up, would all lug our luggage up the stairs. And then we got out and we shot all over the city. We shot little scenes from the script. The script would be made up. I mean, the scenes would be improvised all over. I shot on the trains. I mean, we just shot everywhere. And the bonding part, the human part, is that group became so close on that trip that everybody just wanted to make another movie and another movie and another movie together. Yeah,
Wow.
6 weeks back, everybody got paid, so everybody was able to cover their rent and cover their nut. They had a great experience. They got to say they were the leading man, the leading lady, in a movie. One, as I say, was a romantic comedy, and the other was Indiana Jones and in Egypt, etc. It was a comedy, of course. It wasn't as adventurous, or certainly not as good a movie, but it was a lighthearted, spoofy comedy that got a lot of play, and we remained friends like forever after that. The people on that trip, the experiences that we shared on that trip were just like one in a lifetime experiences. So, but there's so many stories like that. I remember just the innovative ways we had to solve problems. I was shooting on a backlot in Hollywood, and we had 2 scenes left to go. One was in a barn, and the other, because there was a military thing, there were all these tanks and military equipment, and we had 1 generator, and it was a night scene, but only enough cable to reach one. The cable couldn't reach the other, and there was only a few hours left to dawn, and we had to get these 2 scenes. And my production manager, the same one who figured out how to go to Egypt rather than build sets here in New York, he said, I got the problem solved. And I just trusted him. I said, okay. He said, Bill, keep shooting. I got the problem solved. So I keep shooting. And all of a sudden he says, okay, we're ready. And what he had done was he dismantled a whole section of the barn. They took down the walls of the barn. They rebuilt them with C-stands and things holding up the walls of the barn. They brought the hay and stuff like that. They brought the horses over in. And so we shot that scene. And then before the owners woke up in the morning, they reassembled the barn, put it all back together again. Best of my knowledge, they never knew that a whole of that barn had been dismantled and carried over to that thing and shot. But we got the shot, we got moved on. And that was the kind of movie making we were constantly doing. It was, look, we can't afford to do this. We can't afford to do that. How do you think completely outside the box and get something that's like amazing on film? I was always, because SAG actors really wanted to work, but our films could not afford a SAG actor. So I was always looking for a country where you could go to shoot, and then writing the script around that country, and then bringing well-known actors who were really dying to get there. Well, not really, not super, not the Tom Cruises and that kind of the world, but an actor who was really good, who was caught in that he couldn't do the lower budget films because they couldn't afford the whole cast to go SAG. And they weren't getting a job on the big films because the name actors were getting it, and they were caught in a limbo. So we used that situation to go to, we probably shot in 50 countries around the world by just going, building the film around that place. So it was organic to the story. And then, and then saving like 500% on the budget because it was so easy. Extras were easy to get. When we went to the Bahamas, the hotel, the major hotel that was on the beach, gave us 45 free rooms, gave us the right to bring in our own phone system and not have to go through the phone switch. Let us set up food for our team right outside the hotel in a space on the left, so we didn't have to eat in the school kitchen. And let us shoot in the casino, in the fantasy suites all over the hotel. Use the beach, etc., like that. For free. The Bahama divers gave my whole crew scuba diving lessons if our stars wore t-shirts in the movie, and which was great. So we got to shoot underwater. We got boats and helicopters and everything else for free just by doing that. Initially, they said, well, why would we do this? And I said, because I'm going to give you a 90-minute, 35 millimeter commercial for your hotel all over the world. And I'm going to name it what it is. We're going to say it's the Bahamas. We're not going to pretend it's nowhere else. We're going to say it's a phenomenal hotel. And they made that deal. They even, because they had an airline, gave us $150 round trip tickets to the Bahamas. So the actors then could bring down their significant other and have the hotel room. And the SAG actors loved it because, one, they got out of New York during the winter. They got down to the Bahamas. They could bring their wife or their girlfriend or their husband, and they could, when they weren't working, they could eat on the company. And again, we became such a happy family in that because we were away from New York in the wintertime. We were all having a lot of fun. We were making a movie. We were doing all kinds of things that were outside the box that sometimes weren't planned. Like we got down and we brought the grip truck because one of my team owns the grip truck in LA. We put the grip truck on a boat and shipped it all through the Suez Canal to the Bahamas because there was no grip truck there. And the first morning of the shoot, we got up and I walked over to my rent-a-car to get going. And I said, how come the grip truck hasn't left yet? And because it's the wrong side of the street and none of us drive on the other side of the street.
Oh.
And none of us can drive a shift. So there's this whole grip truck, about 10 miles down the road is the location. And none of the grips could drive the truck. None of the gaff drive the truck. So I drove the truck because I'm Irish. I'd spent time in Ireland. I'd driven on the other side of the road. So every morning and every night at the end, I had to wait and drive the grip truck, back to the studio. And it was just a gas. It was all crazy. It was fun. There was, just so many bizarre stories about how you get things done. With it was part of it was a shark movie, that movie, and in order to get close-ups of the shark, and I didn't want to buy stock footage, there was a donut-shaped tank, and the sharks, and the real, man-eating sharks swim in a circle around it. So then what's the possibility of getting a camera in there? I said, oh, you can go in with the camera. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, you're safer in that tank than you are driving through streets of Nassau. And I said, well, he said, those sharks are fed regularly by our crew, and their crew who watched us go into the water and hand feed the sharks. And they don't, people with a scuba tank, that's their friends. That's people who bring the food. They don't attack. They don't attack them. They're very well fed. And so the cameraman, the AC, and me went in the water, and we were there as the sharks just would come right around right at your face. I mean, the fins would just, hit you.
Wow.
And of course, the footage is really great. I had a double. I had a double for the lead actor because he was terrorized. He wouldn't even go in the water because sharks in the water. He wouldn't even go in the water over his head in the beach. So we had a duplicate for the lead actor. But so the lead actor, and at first I didn't see why the AC had to go in, but she says the cameraman's going in, I'm going in, even though it wasn't necessary. She wasn't changing magazines. She said, I'm not letting my guy go in there alone. So she was terrific. At any rate, just floods of memories after memories. This business is such an exciting business. It's like no other. You meet great people, you see wonderful things you'd never see before, you travel the world, and you make very little money, very little money. At the end, you have memories, but you don't have a big bank account, to attest for what you've done.
Yeah, but who's to say which is more valuable, right? I mean, it's a preference.
Well,
I mean, I prefer the memories, but
you have the memory right up to the end, and you can't take the money with you anyway.
Exactly.
So, and if you want to do this thing, this being in cinema, which I think is a term that goes beyond film. It's all of this basket of technologies of telling stories. You make sacrifices, just like in any art. You want to be a dancer, you want to be a musician. And I would say filmmaking is probably a lot less of a gamble than is the music business or dance or theater, et cetera, like that. I mean, those people starve for the craft, and it's just so hard. It's so hard on your body, let's say, when you're a dancer, and then as you put in all that time, and then all of a sudden nature subverts, and then you can't do it anymore to the level you did. With movies, look at these age directors, they just go on and on, So at any rate, just more thoughts, more stories than I have time for. So
yeah. I just want to thank you. I think this has been so informative. It's been like a master class. I've certainly learned from it, and it's so inspiring because it just goes to show you money doesn't make movies, people do.
That's right. What I would say to young filmmakers is you've got to constantly. I don't see how you succeed by doing it the way everybody else does. I think you've got to make your statement using something different, either some kind of a different plan, some kind of a different technology, some kind of a different place, like where you can go, where you can do what you want to do, with people helping you rather than hindering you. And in some cases, that's Hollywood. And I've made a bunch of movies at Hollywood because it made sense to do it that way. You have all that stuff there to do it. But in many other cases, it is just go where you're going to be more welcomed, where you're not going to have a roadblock at every single place with someone hand their hand out for money, and go with a collaborative place where people want you there, where people want to go off their town, their city, their people, and have fun with you making the movie there. Savannah, Georgia, way back in when it was way back during the presidential race there in Georgia, and we were so welcomed in Savannah. A whole Boy Scout troop was helping me do special effects for fun.
Wow.
Was coming on and doing it. We had to make it rain and be a storm in the center of this town, and local guys with airboats came at no charge and put put the airboats at the end of the street, and then the fire department came out with hoses, and we had water and wind going down the street, etc., like this.
Wow.
And did it to be, everybody just, it's fun. We're making a movie, and now that probably right now there's a Georgia Film Commission, anything else where you could never do that anymore. Back in those days, you could do it, and I'm sure there's places around the world where you can go. You think, oh my God, how can I afford it? But the savings on the other end, and what you get on screen is really, is really amazing. We went down to the Mayan ruins in Guatemala and Mexico, etc. Brought our actors in costume and shocked them against the real ruins, and then just came back and inserted other people using, the technology into the into the scene. So I would say to a young filmmaker, if you're going to do it the regular way everybody else does, I think you have less fun and more of an uphill fight and more money in the end than you need to spend or should spend. Use your imagination, not your wallet, to make your movie.
Beautiful. I think that's a great point to leave off on.